Tēnā tātou katoa. It's so exciting to be here this evening in Christchurch's very first Share Club, so thanks heaps for inviting me along this evening. I want to talk about a few things this evening, all money related, definitely a strong emphasis on investing. But this is a question that I love to ask people, and it's quite a personal one, I guess, when you think about finances, because I think it's really telling about not only where we've been, but also potentially where we can go. And we've all got a slightly different answer to this question of, well, who actually taught you about money? And money's so interrelated with everything we do, the answers can be really interesting. So to kick things off, just a little bit about who I am, why I'm in the room, and a bit of insights that I've gleaned along the way. So I'm a failed accountant. I lasted 6 months at a Big Four. Just 6 months. I knew after 3 weeks it wasn't for me. And then I retrained in software development, and it was only when I found that home in software and I was in my happy place that the idea for Banker came along. And Banker's all about teaching kids about money in an engaging and interactive way. And my brother in the middle there, Geordie, he was the one who sparked that idea for me. So I was living in Wellington working as a dev at the time, and I was back home in Christchurch. And that Geordie, this 12-year-old boy, so 12, is that about right? 12-year-old boy, he sat down with me, and I was expecting just to talk about John Cena, the WWE wrestler. But no, this evening he wanted to know all about employment and whether you should hire someone as an employer or a contractor. Dug a bit deeper, and his teacher, Micah, was teaching their class all about money in a really experiential way. So they were all practicing. They had little bits of money that they would pay, and they would budget for the week, and my brother happened to have the classroom chair stacking company, so it was his responsibility to put the chairs up at the end of the day and down, and he earned $200 a week for this. Of course, he was getting over the work. Chair stacking is hard business, so he was going to hire his best mate Ferg to do the laborious sides of it and just take a little profit in. So that really opened my eyes. Like, I think with the journey I've been on through accountancy, always had an interest in business, and now in software, around the power of educating people about money. I was pretty embarrassed. I'd never talked to Geordie about money because we can only talk about, the Crusaders and John Cena. Like, that's his capacity. But no, he could absorb all of this. So that's where the idea for Banker came from. Mike is one of my co-founders, and we've been working away on Banker for the last 4.5 years. Of that time, the team's grown, and so too has my dedication to our mission, our purpose, which aligns really nicely with Sharesies. We're all about ensuring that the next generation, so all Kiwi kids, are prepared for their financial world ahead, whatever that may look like, because there are some scary statistics out there. I'm not saying, like, I'm just gauging the age of the room generally. It's not too late for any of you, but our financial habits are formed, believe it or not, before 7 years old. And that's from observation through some explicit lessons. But that's a really scary statistic. We can shape them and mould them over time and improve them, just like you can anything in your life. But at that stage in your life, you're the most malleable, and that's when those financial lessons are really sinking deep to your core. So it's been a privilege over the last few years to be empowering tens of thousands of Kiwi kids, and also some kids in Australia as well, to get them learning about these concepts and engaging in an intentional and positive way early on through our platform, and we do that through simulative experience. So it's Geordie's account. We built the one on the left in a weekend. He was using it on the Monday, and he was able to take his finances online, and over the last few years we've developed it so the kids not only are earning money and spending money in the class, they're investing, they're saving for retirement in term 4, they're buying a car or maybe a bike instead of having to take public transport. If their car's nice enough, they'll use it to be an Uber driver. So all those sort of those concepts that you and I deal with day to day as adults that we maybe never got taught and we had to learn through trial and error, we're trying to do that in our platform. And I've also learned a lot about the importance of financial education in terms of empowering not only individuals like yourselves who have clearly taken several steps in terms of your financial futures, but also to societal level. So if we take the least financially literate in our society, 10% of the least financially literate people, and we were able to raise their financial literacy rates by 15%, we could add $5 billion to our economy. That's so powerful, and that's overnight just through knowledge, through awareness of money. So that's what we strive to do. But for the remainder of our time together this evening, I want to take you back. This is me, my dad and my sister. She's going to kill me for this, but she's in Fiji at the moment, so, you can laugh it up over there. Because I think something that I find really funny or interesting is that question around who taught you about money, because we had pretty similar upbringings, as you can imagine, my sister and I, She's known me my whole life, and we've grown up in the same house. But we had a divergence in our financial education along the way, and that's had consequences. And I'm not saying anyone is in a better position now as a result, because life is a big mixture of factors and things that you value. But I just wanted to highlight a few of the moments that stick out in my mind in terms of our financial investment and how personally we've been able to prepare and invest in our future as a result. And the end may surprise you. So this is probably where, we're pretty young here. I'm probably about 2 or 3. I don't have kids, but does that look right? I'm this one. And so she's probably 4. I think from that early on, some of these behaviours were shaping. She's the spender, I'm the saver. I'm the investor, and she's, again, the spender, the calling up the parents, to pay off the phone bill or get another prepay thing. And I think really early on, that was no fault of our own, but I showed an interest in that, a tiny interest. I can remember at our grandparents' place, I was talking to my granddad, who's been an investor. He was a farmer, but he's been an investor his whole life. And I started talking to him about this weird thing. I was sitting on his knee, was reading the newspaper, and I was talking to him about the weird little 3-letter words and the graphs on the newspaper. And that little moment of interest I showed at that moment in time resulted in him going on to teach me pretty much everything I know about shares now, to help me open my first term deposit at 10, 12 years old, and see me buying my first shares by 15. Whereas my sister wasn't interested in that, and so that wasn't perpetuated, and that didn't exacerbate over the years. So I had a really strong financial role model through my granddad, and also later on when Mum remarried, through my stepdad as well, who I remember pulling out a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, out of his bookshelf, and I actually read it, and I learned a lot, not so much about investing, maybe a little about investing in yourself, but just him seeing me do that, he began investing in me and in my financial future. And I'm starting to feel a little bit sorry for my sister. Don't worry, the story turns out great for her. But there's consequences that go on from that. So when we both got our first jobs in high school, I was saving and she wasn't, and I was able to invest in my future. And then I get to university, we both do, and we have a lot of access to capital. It's an interesting time, university, for young adults a lot of us are just entering the financial world at that stage. I remember I studied in Dunedin, I don't know if anyone else did, but in O Week there's lines of tents and the banks are all there giving out overdrafts, these wonderful things, $500 overdrafts. And there's, of course, course-related costs and all these good things. So it's a daunting time, and some people can easily get caught up in that. But for those who have had some early financial exposure, they don't. Now, I was lucky. As I invested early, I took a lot of risk because my confidence had built up. And I was able to leave KPMG, where I was working as an accountant, because I had that financial stability to fall back on through my investment portfolio. I would love to say I've still got a strong portfolio today, but as the founder of a startup, if I'm speaking honestly, it's not the case anymore. But having that was fantastic, because the position I was in when I was unhappy, I was able to lean on that. Whereas again, my sister potentially didn't have that. So then fast forward to sort of today, a few years ago, when bank was in its infancy, again, the roles had reversed. My sister, Briley, had some fantastic roles as she graduated university, and she was building up her financial stability. And she was becoming a self-taught, financially empowered young adult, which is, I think, potentially more impressive than having a financial mentor that whole time. Because she was able to start engaging in the financial world and investing and buying her first house, and now, as I mentioned, on holiday in Fiji, which is probably something that I'm pining for in the coming months. So I think in terms of our financial journey and who teaches us about money, for a lot of us that answer is our parents, and we've got strong financial role models. But for the rest of us, and maybe some of you here in the room, it's yourselves and it's each other, and it's trial and error, and that's a really tough way to learn about money. But I think in terms of your financial resilience, if you can do that, there's no wrong answer. The biggest thing to do, or the biggest secret to a successful financial future, is engaging in it. Because so many of us are apathetic by default. We were talking about this question about KiwiSaver before. Statistically majority of people in my generation and below who are enrolled in KiwiSaver, we're lucky if we get to that point, don't know who they're enrolled with, let alone what kind of fund they're invested in. And that's a really scary outcome for our society, because we're essentially losing millions and eventually trillions of dollars when our cohort reaches retirement age. So there is no winner in this story by any means. I would say she's slightly mum's favourite, just slightly, mostly because she's given mum grandkids, and that's something, good, taking the pressure off a little bit on my end. But the biggest thing I can say, the best time to start investing is absolutely now. I think I look at my sister and I think, sure, I started investing 10, maybe 15 years before her, but she started investing as soon as she could and as soon as she was capable and in that position where she could. And that's what I love about Sharesies, is that it empowers us all to take that step today. That $5 that we can sacrifice from parking, from coffee, from whatever, we're able to empower ourselves today. And I think about the generation of banker students that are coming through, the tens of thousands of them en masse. If we could action them to take these next steps, we're not only raising financial literacy rates by 10%, we could see a shift of 20 or 30%. And that increase in GDP, the 5 billion I talked about, it's not linear, it's really exponential due to the power of investing. This is a really, really funny tweet. I hope it's not just me. It shows I've got a terrible sense of humour if that's the case. But there's things we learn about in school, and I don't know how many of you learnt the recorder in school, but I absolutely did. So this speaks to my heart. When I didn't really learn about money in school, I learned it from somewhere else. Our priorities as a society and what we're learning about can be a little bit skewed at times. Money is not everything. It's not the be-all and end-all by any means. But it has a hand in everything, so we can't ignore it. So what we need to do is consider these factors, in my opinion, that can best position us for individual success financially, but also for that societal success. We need to invest in ourselves from an educational perspective and understand where we stand today to become the investor we want to be and invest in our future. Talked about a little bit, spenders versus savers, and the appetite for risk. New Zealanders are inherently, I believe, a little bit risk adverse. We'd rather not stick our heads up above the water too far and outshine anyone too much. We'd rather play in the shallows where we know. And some cool things we see in banker is kids taking that risk and understanding it's okay to take risk today, especially at a young age. Like, everyone in this room is pretty young. We can be high risk, high reward, high growth right now. And as we get further on, we can look to safer waters. The early exposure to the financial world, the dipping your toes in, it's really important, because otherwise time can tick away and it can feel too daunting. If we can engage with financial products, be it through your KiwiSaver, which we're all investors by default if we work, even if we're not with Sharesies, if we work and we have a KiwiSaver account, we're investors and we can take some control over that and how we want to spend our money. The financial role models, I'm really curious. Hopefully I'll hang around after and hopefully have a chat to some of you. They can be good or they can be bad. I think about my family and I think about, sure, there's the explicit lessons I learned from my granddad and my stepdad, but there were some lessons I learned from my mum as well. They were implied. It was through osmosis. It was just my mum, my sister and I for a time, and she worked really hard. We never sat down and talked about money, but I learned as much from her as I ever did about my granddad. So be aware of that. Be aware of your surroundings and everything you're absorbing. I think for today, for every generation that's in the room, but particularly my generation, social media plays a role in your financial behaviours. Whether you're going to admit to it or not, it does. There's pressures coming at you from every single angle. And I tell people to ask if that's investing in your financial future or if it's just investing in something else. It's something to be mindful of. There's also those negative financial role models as well. Parents, I'm not going to name names, but I said my mum was a good one. So through matters of elimination, you may be able to figure it out. But we can learn as much from the bad experiences as we do from the good, so long as we're self-aware. And given you're all here, I believe that you're at that point. Just to wrap it up, I think practicing financial capability and developing yourself is super important. So if we look at Sharesies as a case study, the ability to invest week after week doesn't really matter about the amount. It actually matters about the consistency and the time you're in the game, because you're going to develop your financial confidence and you're going to be best positioned to make those financial decisions that you need to down the track if things are a little bit riskier, or you want to branch out into individual companies as well. And that all sort of accumulates into your financial literacy, so what you know about money, and your financial capability, how you actually behave given what you know. And the capability is the one, if you can make it there, that's what really makes a difference in your financial future. Because we all know what we should do. I know I should go to the gym every day, but do I? No, I don't. I absolutely don't. So if you can nail that part, I think that's what really matters. Just keeping an eye on time. And the last thing I want to leave you with today is I'm so impressed with this turnout. Like, for the very first Share Club event here in Christchurch, this is huge. I don't know where, we've just all come out of the woodwork. This is really exciting. So we're obviously all on our financial journey. We're obviously taking the first step across the start line. But now it's our turn to think about what else we can do for others. So here tonight, there's going to be people behind you on their journey, people ahead of you on their journey, people with poor financial role models around them, and maybe you are already a good financial role model. So I think if we can be open and honest in this conversation societally, we can make a real difference. I'm not saying, sure, go out and peddle the Sharesies tool, because it's awesome. We're obviously all fans. But more than anything, be the financial role model you wish you'd had when you were 6, before those financial behaviours set in. Because that has huge ramifications for our future. Societally, the trickle-on effects from that are absolutely massive. And I could spout off a dozen different statistics around this, but I'll just implore you to not only go on your financial journey, but try and take as many people as you can with you, because money is just still a taboo topic, and it's something, unless we're in an environment like this, people aren't always confident and capable to engage with and speak about, but so many of us need to be, especially those who aren't in this room tonight. So I think that is enough. Oh, it is. That's enough from me. Hopefully there's something useful in there, and I'm really happy to take some questions if there are any. I think there's no one route to financial success. And it really depends on you as a person and a lot of those attributes or considerations on that second to last slide. But I think if we take my sister and I as an example, you're totally right. I was sort of following the mantra of sacrifice early, invest as much as I could, specifically in the share market. Obviously, I wasn't running out and buying a property at 10 or 15. And that held me in good stead for what I wanted to do. I think comparatively, if you look at the housing market, there are still some barriers to entry for a broader populace that investment doesn't. If you look at the 1 cent minimum deposit versus the 50k to 100k for the deposit, I think the glory days of housing are somewhat behind us in terms of the increased capital gains. Like, it is, it has trickled down, excluding the Auckland market, which too now has cooled. I think the biggest thing for me when I think about investing is what gets me excited. And buying a couple of, stagnant buildings isn't as exciting to me as investing in the future, investing in companies. I think of when I was maybe 16, 17, my stepdad took me along to his meeting with his share broker, and he sat me down and he said, what do you want to invest in? And I kind of over-architected the answer, trying to sound sophisticated and very knowledgeable in the space when I was still exceedingly green. And he said to me, okay, well, where do you buy fuel? Where does your family buy fuel? Where do you go shopping? What are you engaging with, outside of the world? And his answer was then, well, those are the companies you should be investing in because you're excited about those. So when I look at my share portfolio now, which is mainly through KiwiSaver, unfortunately, I'm investing in the likes of Netflix and Apple and Google because that's what I'm excited about. That's what I want to read about in my own time. I find the set and forget potentially of property investing a bit boring. So there's no one answer. I think you were bang on, but I think invest in what you're excited about. The biggest thing was, I guess, personal confidence. Huge challenge. I didn't so much mind quitting accounting because I absolutely despise it. And I'm sorry if there are accountants in the room. It's not the profession, it's me. It's not you, it's me. But when I loved software, that was really hard to step away from that. So that was the first challenge. Other than that, every day sort of was a challenge. Capital to fund it. Like I said, I was lucky. I sold down my share portfolio. I was super lucky with my portfolio at the time. Capital. Other than that, motivation and self-belief, because we've got a supportive ecosystem here, but there's also some people that are naysayers, and I think it takes one naysayer to sort of derail 100 points of enthusiasm. So societally, yeah, here we go. Societally, I'm a bit concerned around the pressure we put on each other to almost compete financially. It's almost, there is this rat race, and you don't have to be in the corporate world to experience that. You can just be on Instagram, right? So for me, I try and model financially making decisions that work for me in the long term, that don't just give me or give others instant gratification, because it's very easy to drop $100. I don't even know how much clothes really cost these days. $200 on some dress or something, when I've got like 2 or 3 in my cupboard that I really like. So for me, it's about making continuous, it's a bit like investing, making continuous decisions every day to put yourself in the better position in the long run for something you actually really want, something that's meaningful, not just appeasing others or giving you a little bit of pleasure today. Cool. Thanks very much.